This episode of Made in America is brought to you by America's Inventorly and Home Talk USA. Home Talk is a proud member of the King's Broadcasting Network, which has been bringing you the best in home-based innovation since 1998.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America.
This segment is brought to you by the law offices of R.P. Baraska. RPB law offices have been bringing corporate-level legal expertise to the independent inventor community for more than 20 years. For all your inventing legal needs, trust rpblawoffices.com.
Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America. It's Inventing 2.0. We see it, we make it right here on American soil. And, when we need something, we are just famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, for going out there and solving the problems that Americans see and then saying, oh yeah, can you make this for me? And so my guest right now is Noah McNeely. He is the owner and CEO of Product Quick Start. So he helps a lot of inventors get through that first stage of prototyping, but then also helps them determine best price points, feet on the ground. Sometimes it's feet on the ground here and sometimes it's not. So Noah, what are some of the things that you have worked on, and thank you so much for being with me,
Sure, my pleasure.
that are manufactured in America?
Well, to be honest, this actually not a huge list because I do tend to work. I will cover some. We'll go back in time a little bit and cover some, but most of the people I work with today are inventors and entrepreneurs, and when they are just starting out, it's very difficult to make a mass-produced product in the U.S. when you're starting in small volumes. There are some exceptions, and then there are some types of products that pretty well have to or should be made here. So some of these are going to go to my non-inventor clients from the past, which I don't really do a whole lot of this anymore, but a couple in the medical space. One is called, they're called Dose Logics now because they got bought out, but basically it's a little pharmaceutical device that the pharmacist can put these medicated creams into. And it's kind of think like a deodorant stick, but it can be filled at your pharmacy by some sort of custom cream. Anyway, it's a big hollow item, a relatively big hollow item. Just didn't make sense to make offshore. They produce those actually at a factory here in Atlanta, outside Atlanta, and they do all the assembly, and they make quite a lot of those. And like I said, they actually had an exit event. They sold, the inventors of that sold it a few years ago for quite a bit of money, which I can't really disclose the total amount. Another topic or another example is a product called Earcept. This was invented by a doctor years ago that I worked with in my former company. And basically it was a product that simplified a nursing procedure. It took what was a 30-minute nursing procedure, made it a 5-minute nursing procedure, which, as you can imagine, nurses are expensive. So that was actually a very important thing to do. And that product became widely available, and actually it's in a lot of hospitals today, but it's essentially a large container filled with sterile solutions. So you don't want to be shipping, containers full of essentially medicated water across the ocean if you can help it. So that's also made here in the U.S. just because, two things. One, it's medical. We like to keep those things here when we can. And two, it just didn't make sense from a shipping standpoint. A third topic, I keep saying topic, but a third product I'll talk about is actually not one I worked on, but one that a good friend of mine developed, and it is a food-related item. It's called OPU Probiotics. It was developed by Tiffany Crumans, who was actually one of the very first people ever funded on Shark Tank, and that was like a decade or more ago. And she was actually on the pilot episode. But this is a new business she started a few years ago, and it is it's probiotic. It's a powder that you ingest basically to help with your digestive system. But that's also made here in the U.S. because it is a formulated. It's not medicine, but it's like a supplement. It's medical adjacent, and it could be made offshore. But in their case, it made so much more sense just to mass produce the powders here, package them here. So they've done that from ground up. Developed packaging, manufacture it, box it, ship it, everything right here in the South, which is another good reason to do stuff in America. I've done some military stuff in the past that had to be made in the U.S., actually either in the U.S. or in a combination of the U.S. and allied countries like South Korea. And then in the inventor space more recently, some of the things I've seen are inventors that are starting kind of small, especially if it's a big item that has a lot of components. So I'm working with one gentleman who has been selling these football training products, which are this big kind of contraption. He's been doing it for years, and he was hand making them at first. Then he started working with me, and he's like, I can't make these fast enough. Help me. So we went down a path of, okay, how do we redesign it for stuff you can make faster? That got him to a certain level. Then it was like, all right, these parts are too expensive. So then we actually did a hybrid approach of making some parts offshore, have those come into the country. Then he would assemble those in combination with parts he made here. And that's a process that over time, more and more of those parts may be made in different places, but it's still a made in America item because most of the assembly work, most of the value is added here in the U.S. Trying to think, what else can I ramble about?
Well, I know that,
I mentioned,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say the things that are made in America, and you can put that legally on the packaging.
Right.
Things that are assembled here, it's got to be, different, but you can put it on there. So as an American consumer, you can go and look and find, even if you're shopping online, you can go and find, that made in America. And a lot of there's a couple of websites that are dedicated to products that are made in America. And so you can find those. There's Made in America store. It's all products. There's like 15,000 products that are made in America. And they're actually, they're in the upper Northeast, and they are a vacation destination because they made it so much fun to shop in America and buy American made products. So, we've had some of those products on. There's a gentleman in Colorado, and his product is sold on the Made in America store. And it's called Pine Right. And it is made out of the junk left from the beetle killed pine out in Colorado. And I use it every day. My entire family uses this stuff, but he just makes it by the barrelful. And that's one of the products that is actually shipped out of America to China by the barrelfuls because they sell it as a beauty aid.
Cool. And don't, even though I do a lot of products offshore in different places, don't misunderstand me. I'm a huge fan of making stuff in the United States and wherever it can be done. But sometimes it's just not feasible or appropriate because more important sometimes than making something in America is to have your business actually succeed. If you don't succeed in your business, then you're not going to make stuff in America for very long. So that's something we have to look at in a broader context as well. And one of the strategies that I do often suggest to my clients who are, small companies, startups, inventor entrepreneurs, is I'm going to use an expression which actually came from a beer commercial. It's misogynistic and it's sexist. But in this beer commercial, I don't know why I remember this, but one character says to another, the right girl is not necessarily the same as the right now girl, if that makes any sense to you. So the factory you start with to get your business launched doesn't necessarily have to be a factory you stay with forever. So one of the things that I occasionally suggest for people that do want to make their stuff here is use offshore factories really as a manufacturing incubator. Get your business strong, grow your volumes, grow your brand, whatever you need to do, become a big enough company in the sense that you're going to place a big enough order that now an American factory would actually be attracted to working with you. Because if you go in right now and you're, hey, I want to make 1,000 of these, you go into an American factory, most of the time they're going to look at you as a nuisance and they're going to send you to someone like me to get rid of you. And there are exceptions, of course, but if you're making a product that you need to sell for $10, you're making 1,000 of them, you got to make it for $3. $3,000 does not turn the needle for an American factory at all. So again, you're a nuisance. Let's get you to the point where you're no longer a nuisance. Now you're going in and saying, I want to order 30,000 of these. And now that opens up opportunities for automation. It opens up our opportunities for that U.S. factory to actually make a profit and to actually partner with you to help your business grow.
You're absolutely right. And I've seen that happen multiple times where, the first thing is getting out the door and getting the interest from the consumer. And then it's a matter of, okay, can we do it better here? And then we're going to talk about some of those issues as soon as we come back. Right now, we're going to take a break, go and pay some bills, everybody. So stick with us as we talk more about those challenges of Made in America and why you should make sure you're taking a look at that packaging. We'll be right back.
This segment is brought to you by SearchQuest Patent Search. SearchQuest provides for a comprehensive patent search that searches the entire world and not just the U.S. Patent Office. Make sure that before you spend those big bucks having a patent written, you've done your due diligence by getting a comprehensive patent search. Use SearchQuestPatents.com for all your patent search needs. They scour the world for you.
And thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America. We need it. We make it right here on the shores of the good old USA. It's never been easier. And my guest for this episode of Made in America is Noah McNeely with Product Quick Start. So he helps a lot of folks who are trying to manufacture understand the reality check. And generally, the first place it starts is with pricing, right, Noah?
Yeah, absolutely. So, people will come in and inventors often have, as I'm sure you know, inventors often have this misguided knowledge or pseudo knowledge of what pricing is or should be. So they'll go to Walmart and they'll buy this thing. This is kind of like what I want to make. It costs $8. Then they come in and say, why can't we make this at a price I can sell for $8? Well, because that one you saw at Walmart, they made 50,000 of those at one time. You want to make 1,000 of these at one time. So yours are going to cost a lot more. So that's, there's a certain economy of scale that happens with most types of manufacturing. Now, there are certain exceptions, but most mainstream products, the more you make at one time, the cheaper they're going to be.
Yeah, I run into that all the time. I'll tell an inventor, it's like, all right, you want to make 1,500, I get it, but get your price points based on 5,000, 10,000, and 20,000. Because when you're looking at hitting a particular mark in the consumer marketplace, and you say, all right, I've got to be able to do the multiple 5, I've got to be able to, sell this for $25 means I've got to be able to have it landed price at $5, but I can't do that if I'm making 1,500. But at what point are you getting it done? And where do you need to go to get those price points done? And so it really is, it's all about the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't build your business plan around what I would call a pilot run order. I mean, oftentimes, if you as an inventor, if you break even on your first order, you're doing well. A lot of the times you really have to look at that as almost an investment in terms of marketing, in terms of product awareness, in terms of getting reviews, all the sorts of things necessary to build your business. You can't think of it as, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of money on the first one of these I sell and on every one after that. No, you're probably at best going to break even in your early stages when you're just making a small number. But at the same time, I've got inventors that come in and say, well, I want to make 20,000 right off the bat. I advise against that. And the reason I do, even though, yes, you'll get better numbers at that, what if there's something that you put out there and the market says, well, I don't like this. It should be blue. Wouldn't you rather get that feedback after making 1,000 than after making 20,000? And the answer is yes, because after you make that 1,000, you get all this feedback says, well, 9 out of 10 people want it to be blue or they want it to be whatever. we can go and make that change, and then you can order 20,000 that are, that respond to what the market wants.
You are absolutely right. I had a gentleman years ago, had a, a box. It was a particular style of box that they would use, put popcorn in at the movie theaters.
Mhm.
Okay, he had 15,000 made. And they go, it doesn't work in the movie theater. His wife wanted to kill him. And I can't say
I'll
as I
bet.
blame her. He had 15,000 in the basement of a box. They loved the concept. It was the wrong size.
Mm.
And that was
Yeah,
it.
and see, that's a case where he could have made probably a prototype and figured that out. But sometimes you do have to get the product out there. You have to get feedback from dozens of people before you learn what you don't know. But yeah, pilot runs are very important.
Well, and we had another lady. She had a wonderful type of teether for babies, and she had the first run made in China, and they were like a quarter of an inch off of what was medical grade for choking, and
Yeah,
she didn't even realize it until after. So that was 5,000 that went in the trash because
sure.
she couldn't sell them. Now,
Yeah,
my daughters claimed it was the best teether they ever had for their boys, but she had to go back and restart over.
sure. Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, that's a whole different show probably, but there are a lot of regulations. There's a lot of legal issues. There's just a lot of best practices that as an inventor, you've never done this before. You don't know about those things. So that's one of those cases where, that's comes through the CPSC, the Child Product Safety Commission. They have pages and pages and pages of stuff you're supposed to do if you're going to put a product in a child's hands. If you don't do those, you're going to get pulled. That's why you see a lot of products out there that say not intended for children under the age of 3, because there are things on that list that product cannot meet, and it doesn't need to meet. It's not, they're not trying to sell it for that group, but they have to put that on there because it's got a little part or it's got a whatever. Because again, there's regulations that people have to follow that may not even be aware of.
You're right, and so many inventors don't realize that, the product liability insurance on a product, you know, it does not stay in effect if you add your product to it. It's really odd, but
Mhm.
you've got a product that is for a car seat. Well, if the manufacturer doesn't make it and put it on their car seat, you are causing their product liability insurance to be negated, and now you are
Mhm.
responsible. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, that is a whole another topic that inventors need to be aware of, and people taking products to market. And it's, you get past the stage of calling someone an inventor when they're a manufacturer now and they're getting a product out there. And so when we're looking at that made in America stuff, the product liability insurance, it doesn't matter if it's made here or it's
Mhm.
brought in from someplace else. The person with their foot on the ground in the US trying to sell it is the one that's got to deal with the
Right.
product liability insurance.
Yeah, I mean, if something happens and someone gets seriously injured or whatever, the lawyers are going to try to sue everyone they can. And, in your case, let's say something that you advertise as modifying a car seat. Yeah, well, they're going to sue the car seat company, but the car seat company's insurance is going to be like, they got bigger lawyers than you do. But they're going to sue you too. So absolutely need to have that product liability insurance. Can't rely on your factory to have it. Frankly, that's either a U.S. factory or an offshore factory because everyone will be sued. But that's why insurance exists.
You're exactly right. I know there was a gentleman had a product that was going to sit on a ladder, and he did not realize that when they put the product on the ladder, that it then negated the ladder's company's responsibility to cover the insurance, and it fell all to him. Now he went out and bought it. He went out and got everything he needed because it was a cool product. But then he had to cover it for all of the ladders, and interesting. You just don't realize when you're out there picking something up off a shelf what went into getting it there. So we're going to be right back and talk to Noah McNeely some more about some of these challenges that manufacturers face getting the products out there to you, Mr. and Miss Consumer. So stick with us, everyone. We will be right back for another segment of Made in America. If you're an inventor or you know an inventor out there who would just like to be able to have a conversation with other inventors,
Join the Inventors Roundtable. It's free. The meetings are virtual, so you can be anywhere in America and talk to another inventor. And for a lot of folks out there, understanding the process, being able to ask questions, getting good service provider information is critical to the inventing process. So, got questions? Want to join? It's free, inventorsroundtable.org.
Thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America. And my guest is Noah McNeely. We're talking about some of the challenges of manufacturing in America. And, if somebody had the choice, Noah, they would want to manufacture in America. First of all, it's a pain in the neck to deal with the Chinese New Year. It seems like there's always a New Year coming around. And the logistics now of getting it here and shipping it, and the heavier it is, the more expensive it is to ship. So that's become a bigger issue. And everybody wants to be able to put Made in America on their packaging. So what are some of those things that you run into that are the challenges that somebody's got to deal with?
Yeah, and you're right about the Chinese holidays. There's also one called Grave Sweepers Day or something like that, which hits me, I think, in the fall. So I always have to be mindful of that as well. And some of my suppliers are real good about letting me know, hey, this is coming. And then others are like, hey, we're off next week. Okay, well thanks for
Yay.
thanks for giving me a heads up. I think there are a number of challenges. Go to China, you throw a rock in the air, you're going to hit a factory, and with the rock. Here, there are not as many factories available to inventor entrepreneurs. In China and other parts of the world, their infrastructure around manufacturing has been built up in a lot of different ways, where ours hasn't. Of course, they've got the huge factories that make things like the iPhone and the Roomba, and I've toured some of these factories. They have like 3,000 employees. That's not the inventor factory. The inventor factory is much smaller, and typically they are well suited to take on a small volume project and then grow with that inventor. They're happy to make 1,000 of something, and then you come back and you're successful. They want you to be successful. You're their salesperson at that point. You come back and you order 10,000, 100,000. They can keep up with that. Here in the U.S., it's a lot more difficult because, and we alluded to this in the last segment, for a few reasons. One, if you're making 1,000 of something, unless it's a really high value item, you're probably a nuisance to a U.S. manufacturer. Two, there's a simple law of supply and demand issue here because there are not as many factories that can do small volume work profitably. So those that do, their prices can go up and up and up, and then they end up doing really higher end or higher value items in the medical space, in spaces where there's a lot of margin on that product. Because plastic costs pretty much the same in Asia as it does here. It's the raw material, but here there's just not as much competition between those companies that are making stuff out of plastic. You've also got the issue of labor and assembly. So if you have an item that's just a single piece of plastic, you run the machine, out pops a part. Yeah, you can get that cost pretty low in the US a lot of times. But then you've got the issue of now I got to put it in a package, got to pay someone to do that. And here at $20, $30 an hour, whatever to do that, that's a lot more expensive than it is offshore. If you've got multiple parts that have to be assembled, glued together, or screwed together, or whatever, that's someone you have to pay to do that assembly work. So some items, I've got products that have hundreds of parts involved in them that are inventor products. No way that inventor could afford to make that in the US and still reach their price points. Now, if it were some, like medical therapy device that costs $8,000, absolutely, we can get that done. There's profit, there's margin there. If it's an exercise equipment that you need to sell for $99, there's just no way to make it happen any way other than doing that offshore, at least at this point in time.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is weight has a big deal to do with something. So they're looking at bringing a lot more of the larger equipment manufacturing back, like washing machines, dishwashers, because it costs now so much to ship them back. So where everybody left, 40, 50 years ago to go manufacture in China, a lot of that manufacturing now is starting to come back. And it has a lot to do with the fact that, we are more mechanized now. So there is a lot more that just, flows down the
Mhm.
pipeline of getting manufactured. Same thing, a lot more with AI being, involved. It minimizes then the workforce that is needed, the manual labor. Shoot, we saw that, that has happened in different industries all throughout our history. That, manufacturing of different things shifts based on the technology involved. And, when people have the choice, they want to try to do made in America. And
Of
sometimes
course.
it's just not an option. And sometimes it's like you said earlier, it's not an option for the first run, but you can keep looking at it for the next run.
Yeah, you can look to reshore that at some point once your business numbers work out in that way. And you're right about the weight. I mean, fuel costs continue to go up, but it's also volume. I mean, there's certain products that you don't make overseas just because they're these big hollow things full of air, like igloo coolers. I mean, you're not going to make that in China and ship them over typically because you're just shipping a lot of air. And you're going to max out your container size much faster than you will your weight. Containers max out on two ways, by weight, by volume. Both are expensive. Now, what you do see sometimes, even in those things like the washing machines and such, they still get a lot of components from offshore that can be, bulk shipped. So they'll get this big Gaylord container of whatever, doors or whatever. Then those come in here and they get combined with US manufactured parts to make that final washing machine or that final piece of equipment or whatever it is. So there are a lot of hybrid approaches out there, and it's really a more complicated map than it used to be. I mean, 100 years ago, you had a factory in Cincinnati, you just made your stuff there. Now you got that factory, you're making stuff here and here and here and here, and it all comes together and it gets complicated, especially if you're a big company, because you got to make sure all the shipments get there at just the right time to assemble and build your final thing. So there's people, that's their whole job, is
Yeah.
figuring those logistics out.
And I've got one gentleman who's been manufacturing for years now, and he started out in China, but the product was so poor when it got here that the failure rate made it actually cheaper to manufacture here. And so, and then he could go and watch it being made and he could see what was going on and he didn't have to deal with the different weird holidays. And he still manufactures that product and sends it worldwide. He sells all over the world, but he has it manufactured here because now the failure rate went from, 20% down to 3%.
And that actually raises one of the other challenges or the inventors face with offshore manufacturing is quality control. China, India, everywhere, it's just like anywhere else. You've got good, you've got bad, you've got ugly. There's great factories that make fantastic products in China. There's also factories that, you know, they barely know what they're doing. So if you try to navigate that as an inventor, you go to Alibaba and you say, oh, I'm going to pick this one. That in doing this 25 years, I've seen that work out well one time. And everyone else has regretted it. And it's like you need someone that has those relationships in China, people like me, not plugging just myself. There are a lot of people that do, that has gone through vetting and knows who to work with and who not to work with and can spot a scam really quickly. Now, it sounds like your friend, sounds like they had a factory that had bad quality control. They could probably make it in Asia if they wanted to now, but it sounds like they're all set up to make it in the US and it's doing great. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean it's been wonderful, and like I said, he sells them and installs them all over the world. But it was little miniature LED lighting, so the failure rate was so high, and he
Mhm.
couldn't inspect them. It's like, well, when I get an inventor says, well, I'm going to go to China and, you know, look at the factories. Bad idea. You hire somebody here that already
Yep.
knows because that's just a nightmare waiting to
Yep.
happen.
And
And
you need someone that's got some contacts there that can be on the ground when needed. I mean, if you're a 25-hour plane flight away, you're going to get a little less priority than the guy sitting in the lobby.
no kidding. You want to go to China, hire a travel agent. You want to manufacture, you hire somebody feet on the ground in the US that knows what they're doing. Because you know what? there are all kinds of challenges to, doing that. And for some products, it's just better to do made in America. And we're going to
Absolutely.
talk about some of those different things as soon as we come back. So everyone, if you are out there and you have the option to buy made in America, by all means, there are places to go where you can find all the different wonderful options, from pet products to kitchen products, car tools, made right here in the good old USA. So stick with us. We'll be right back with Noah McNeely and talk about some more of those challenges and the respect we need to have for those people manufacturing right here in our own backyard. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
TrueUp, easiest way to hang your pictures. We all know how stressful picture hanging can get. TrueUp comes with everything you need to level and hang pictures with no damage and no mess. Just peel, apply the adhesive to the back of the TrueUp mount and press firmly. Remove the remaining adhesive. Use the level and press and hold for 3 to 5 seconds to attach the TrueUp mount to your wall with a strong hold. The TrueUp frame adapter is compatible with most frames on the market. Apply the adhesive strip to the adapter, stick, and your frame hangs easily on the wall mount. This lets you adjust your picture side to side for perfect placement every time. The possibilities are limitless, and it's easy on your walls. Picture hanging can be truly a one-person job. TrueUp, the future of hanging is here.
Thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America. It is brought to you by RPB Law Offices. If you are an inventor, manufacturer, trying to get a product out there, dealing with someone who is just giving you a real pain in the neck type of experience, you need to call RPB Law Offices so that they can help you out. So it is 303-910-2344. And you can get the help you need with your product. So my guest for this segment is Noah McNeely. Thank you again, Noah, for being with us today. We appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
There have been times that I have gotten product and it says, it's a medium, it would fit my Barbie doll. So, it's not unusual that folks get really angsty when they get something and the quality just stinks.
Sure.
I would rather pay, 3 times as much for it and know that when I get home it's going to fit me. Or it's not going to fall off the wall and crash on the floor.
Fair enough. Yep, I agree.
We see people now kind of shifting that mentality, and especially shopping on Amazon and stuff like that. They go out and you can tell by price points if it's made in America or not, and cheapest is no longer in your best favor. So, how do you see people, adjusting? You've got the adjustment from the inventor's point of view, the manufacturers. We're going to call them manufacturers in this segment, not inventors. How do you see them shifting their thought process, but the consumers as well? Because, in that point of view, I'm a consumer, and I would rather pay, 3 to 4 times for something and know that it's not going to, fit my Barbie doll. I don't have one anymore.
Sure.
I'm too old for that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I, I think it depends on 2 things. Number one, the individual consumer. I actually know some people they like stuff from Asia, and that's fine. And I think it also depends on what the item is. I mean, um, if it's something more premium and more appropriate for, a made in America thing, like yeah, I don't know, a high end grill. Yeah, that might be something like you would prefer to get in the US, like a big green egg. However, if you're looking for, hey, I just need a grill to get me through the summer, you might go look at one of those cheaper models that's probably still sold and designed by a US company that came from overseas. I used to do a lot of work earlier in my career. One of my clients was Charbroil. People are probably familiar with them. They're down in Columbus, Georgia. They make grills for years. They used to manufacture in Columbus, but it got to the point where they had so much other competition. It's not that they didn't want to manufacture there, but they could not compete at that level price point with companies like Fiesta Grill and et cetera that were manufacturing overseas. So they had to shift most of their stuff overseas. They still do a little bit in Columbus. They still do all their engineering and et cetera there, as far as I know. I haven't worked with them in years. But you see really high-end grills often still are made in the U.S. by other companies, again, like the Big Green Eggs and the Kamado Joes and the others out there. So I think it depends on what the item is. I think it depends on what your purpose for the item is. There are things that I say, I want something that's heirloom quality. Yeah, oftentimes you're going to look for a U.S. company for that. But then there are other items which are more commodity. I don't, this is weird to say because they used to be so expensive when we were kids. Televisions are a commodity item now. You're not going to go buy a TV made in the United States. And frankly, there's not profit for companies to make TVs in the United States. They're so cheap to make offshore in all parts of the world right now that's something I would be skeptical. So, yeah, I'm saying that right. It's a weird word to say. Skeptical of a TV that said made in the USA, just because I know what all goes into that. Now, I think that brings up an issue that, if you're a fan of history, look back 200, 300 years to the colonial era. In America, all the colonies were making raw materials. They made timber, they made fur, they made cotton, they made whatever. But the real value was created for the most part when those commodities went back to Europe, to England, et cetera, to be converted into finished goods like cloth and whatever else. I think there's a similar analog, not exact, but similar analog of what we're talking about today in the sense that commodity items, they're almost like the raw materials back then. So like, why would you want to make a coat hanger in the U.S. when you can get it made so cheaply in China? Why not instead focus on the business around your coat hanger, use that to create value? Maybe you end up creating other products too that end up being made in the U.S., but it doesn't make sense for everything. And once again, I'm rambling, so I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's like I don't care where the coat hanger is made. I care more about where the coat is made. And again, sure. It really depends on what it is and what can happen with it. And how you start out, doing it. Does technology allow you to bring it back? Does technology require you to go again? And consumer is God when it comes to pricing products. If the consumer won't pay for it,
right,
you're toast. It doesn't matter where you're making it. It's all about the price and will the consumer pay for it?
It's the same thing as with environmentally friendly products. I mean, everyone says, yeah, I want an environmentally friendly product made here in the U.S. until they see the cost, right?
Yeah. And it's the same thing, when you're looking down that shelf space and you see, made in America, and it's twice, the consumer's going to decide, what it is. And a lot of times, it depends. Is it something that you're keeping food in, all right, that can dissolve? All right, you buy them made in America because it's safer. Is it something that you're, like you used, hanging a bunch of clothes on? You really don't care. So it's, something that's got chemicals in it, something that, consumers make the choices based on what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and what they're going to do with it. And, that's just kind of the way it is with, manufacturing in America. So everybody's join us again next week for another segment of Made in America, where we get to tell the stories of Rogers Manufacturing and some of the other companies out there that do manufacture right here. What challenges have they faced over the last 100 years? So join us again next week when we will have another guest and another story. Thank you, Noah, so much for being with us today, and thank you very, very much to King's Broadcasting Network.